We get started. This is great to see everybody coming in. Welcome. We're glad to have you here. I already mentioned if you're not on our list already, we'd love to have you. So please put your name and your email and what league you belong to into the chat. We'll do that reminder again. We're just going to wait one more minute and then we're going to get started with Kitty Westin. She's waiting in the back. No, in the front.
In front.
In the front.
Oh,
Hope everybody is surviving this muggy weather. Oh my goodness. Yes, we've got some people from Duluth.
Duluth.
I grew up in Duluth.
Amber is excellent. Oh, Carrie.
All right. I think we're going to get started. We're 2 minutes after. Oh, thank you. So again, we'd love to have you put your name and email and what league you're from in the chat so we know who you are. Welcome, everyone. So we're going to get started. Welcome, everyone. I'm Sarah Stevens. Monica Murphy and I, Monica, you want to give out a wave? Are the ones who started this new initiative in the Minneapolis League. We're calling it Women Defending Democracy. We are basing it on the Unite and Rise effort from the National League that began in May of this year. We are on a roll. We've got an incredible steering committee. We've got Meg Walters. Do you want to say hello, Meg? And Lisa Mills. Who else? Alicia is not on our call. And Kitty Westin is also on our steering committee. But today we have a very special event, and I'm thrilled to be introducing and hosting this event with Kitty Westin, former president of our Minneapolis League, and also an advocate of many, many, many years. Kitty, I'm going to ask you to give more of a better introduction to yourself, but she is the former president of the Minneapolis League and founder of the Eating Disorder Coalition, and was a driving force behind really seminal legislation, the Anna Westin Act, which was passed in 2015. And she will tell us more about that. I think many of you might have seen the picture of her with Obama. I think the day that they were shaking hands and passing that important act of legislation. So greetings, everyone. I am now going to pass the microphone, so to speak, to Kitty Westin. Kitty, we're delighted to have you here. Take it away.
Thank you very much, Sarah. And thank you, everybody, for being here. This is quite an honor, and I am really excited to be sharing some of the wisdom and knowledge that I've gained over these many years as an advocate. I think it's more important than ever that we are talking about this and that we're helping people know how to be effective advocates. So I want to just say that there's going to be a lot of information tonight, and I want you to be able to listen and not worry about having to take notes. I will send my slides to anybody who wants them. I might take a couple things out, but you know, like personal pictures and things. But the information is I'm happy to share it. I've got some worksheets that go along with some of these presentations that I'm happy to share. And we're going to ask you to ask your questions in the chat, and Meg is going to help me follow that, and we'll try to answer them in real time. And if not, we're going to try to keep some time at the end, maybe about 10 minutes to, you know, just have a little discussion. So next slide, please.
All right. Okay, just getting set up, you all.
Okay.
Here we go. And
yeah,
there we go. All right.
Next slide.
Next slide. There we go.
So I just want to talk a little bit about my journey to activism. I'm what I call an accidental advocate. I didn't intend to become an advocate. I didn't do any training to be an advocate. But I turned into an advocate after my beautiful, amazing daughter, Anna Westin, who was born on November 27th, 1978, died on February 17th, 2000. She was 21 years old. She died of an eating disorder, anorexia nervosa. She was this amazing, charming, smart, creative, incredible young person that was taken away by a serious mental illness. At the time, there was so much misunderstanding about eating disorders. Many people believed, and some people still do believe, that eating disorders are behavior problems or choices, which is not true. They are real mental illnesses. And at the time, insurance companies did not think that eating disorders were serious and they didn't require specialized care. So when Anna became really ill and we took her to the hospital, we were told, I basically had to carry her in. She had low weight anorexia. And the doctor said she needs to be hospitalized today or she will die. Her organs were shutting down. Her heart rate crashed when she stood up. I mean, it was real serious. And the insurance company said, take her home. We'll have to review this. So that was such a shock to me. I can't even tell you what went through my head. It's like, what? It just doesn't even make sense. We have this great insurance. She's got this illness. The doctors, her team is saying she needs to be in the hospital. I can't take her home. So we, did everything we could, which any parent, any loved one would do, to make sure she could get the treatment she needed, including, spending money out of the college funds and the retirement funds and considering a second mortgage on the house and looking for, friends and family who could loan us money because treatment was well over $2,000 a day. But of course, we're going to do that, right? And Anna knew that. And shortly before she died, she told her sister that our family would be better off if she were dead because she was such a burden. Now, we never talked to her about the financial stuff. You focus on your treatment, you get the treatment you need, you stay in the hospital, you go to residential care because that's what you need. And that's the only thing important. But of course, she did recognize the burden. Anna died by suicide. It's the second leading cause of death for people with eating disorders. The first one is heart failure and organ failure. So that launched me into this mission, this purpose in my life to try to prevent anybody else from experiencing what we experienced. And one of the hardest things that happened after Anna died was writing her obituary. It was the most painful thing. I had to say the words, it was real. And I remember sitting with the funeral director, it's my husband and I and my other two daughters, and he said, well, you can start it with saying Anna died unexpectedly, Anna died at home. And I said, no, Anna died of an eating disorder. I am not ashamed of her. We're going to say that. I didn't realize how I don't know. I just didn't realize how just unbelievable that was that we wanted to state that in the newspaper. At the time, I learned pretty quickly that it was. And then we get to the end of it and he said, well, do you want flowers or do you have causes that you want people to donate money to? And we're sitting in this office. I said, it just came out of nowhere, send donations to the Anna Westin Foundation. My husband gave me one of those looks like, what are you talking about? And I said, I don't know. It came to me, this is something we have to do. We have to talk about this. We cannot bring Anna back, but maybe we can save someone else. So I became an activist. And what drove me to be politically active is I'm a psychologist by trade. I contacted Paul Wellstone, who was our former senator. Many of you on the call remember him and probably knew him, and told him the story. And he said, Kitty, you need to bring this story to Washington, D.C. You need to bring as many other people along with you that have stories and tell it to members of Congress. That's how change happens. Okay, I'll figure out how to do that. And so that is how we started the Eating Disorders Coalition. which is a national advocacy organization that's been around for 25 years and had some pretty impactful successes by grassroots activism. So I'm all about grassroots activism. And that's what we're going to talk about tonight. And we're going to tie it to what we're dealing with in the country right now. We're going to use the SAVE Act as the example because we've already had some initiatives around that. And I think it's a really good way to start and encourage people to become activists. I know everybody on this call, you're already an advocate. You're on this call, you care about this. So thank you for that. Hopefully, some of the things I talk about today will give you confidence in your advocacy, will help you understand how to be really effective at advocacy. Okay, next slide, please. So, just want to start with basics. What is advocacy? Advocacy basically is having a passion about something and being willing to talk about it, even if it makes you vulnerable to talk about. It's about standing up and pushing back and saying, this is important. I want you to listen to me. I'm going to ask you to help solve this problem or address this issue. And it's about showing up, because those of us that have been politically active know that you have to show up and you have to continue to show up. You have to, I've been to hundreds of meetings with our elected officials and sat with them. I can't tell you how many times in rooms talking about it. And you can't ever give up, because sometimes it takes a long time. It took us 15 years to pass the Anna Westin Act, and it was worth it. So basically, one of the things that the definition about advocacy I think is the best is that fourth bullet point under what is advocacy is that it turns something you care about into action. And it's actually that bridge between, I really care about this issue and this needs to happen. And so it's the bridge in between those things. There are some really important things to remember and to learn to be an effective advocate. And one of the things that I want to say right up front is that advocacy, a lot of it is about building relationships. It's about showing up and talking to people and doing it in a really respectful way. It doesn't mean you can't push back. It doesn't mean you can't disagree. But what it means is we're going to have this meeting. We're going to chat about this, or I'm going to send you this email, and we're going to have a communication around it. And so, the effectiveness is if you have a purpose. So in my case, it was addressing some of the issues around eating disorders, particularly insurance companies refusing to cover the cost of higher levels of care. I had a purpose. We bring a couple times a year, 200 plus advocates to Washington, D.C. that have a similar purpose. They have a little bit different stories, which we're going to talk about later. But they've been affected by eating disorders, and they want to address those issues. You have to prepare. You don't just go into a meeting or send an email without really thinking it through and making sure you have your facts right, making sure that you know the issue inside and out, and you have to be persistent. Like I said, it took us 15 years to get our bill signed into law. And that persistence goes back to my comments about building relationships. So what we know about policymakers and what happens in Washington is things are always in flux. They change a lot. So I could be sitting in front of a staffer or a member and having a conversation and building a relationship and knowing that I'm probably not going to get the reply or the response I want, but I might go back the next time I go, and that staffer might be in a totally different office, but we remember each other, and they might be working for somebody else then. and administrations change. And so being persistent in building relationships is what's really, really important. One of the things that is a story about, being prepared and the persistence is, it's pretty easy to ruin a relationship pretty quickly if somebody goes off message or loses control or shows up angry or even shows up too emotional. So we're going to talk about that as we go forward too. So next slide. I had the great privilege of learning about grassroots activism from Paul Wellstone. And as those of you who know him or knew him or remember him, he was a grassroots activist inside and out. His first campaign was all about it. His green bus, which his son David is refurbishing, and we're going to see it again soon, traveling around the state, listening to people, talking to people, finding out what they care about. And like I said, he's the one that encouraged me. He's the one that brought me to Washington, took me under his wing. He and Sheila became friends of mine. It was an amazing thing. And then President Obama was also a grassroots activist. He was a community organizer in his early days and believes in the power of advocacy. And today, when he talks about what we need to do, he talks about grassroots activism. All right, next slide, please. So why should we be advocates? One of the things I hear so very often when I'm talking with people about becoming advocates, or even when I'm in Washington training advocates, is, well, my voice isn't important. I'm one person and there's millions of people and nobody's going to listen and nobody cares. And that is simply not true. The opposite is true. Advocacy really empowers people, and it empowers groups to, join together and to speak out and to be heard. And when you get millions of people voicing something, our policymakers, they listen. And I'm going to read a quote, one of my favorite quotes that actually Patrick Kennedy shared with me about his uncle, Bobby Kennedy. And this really speaks to the power of collective voices and bringing people together and people, each individual speaking out. It is from numberless diverse acts of courage and belief that human history is shaped. Each time a man stands up for an ideal or acts to improve the lot of others or strikes out against injustice, he sends forth a tiny ripple of hope, and crossing each other from a million different centers of energy and daring, these ripples build a current which can sweep down the mightiest walls of oppression and resistance. That's what we have to do now. We have to have those millions of pieces of energy coming together and sending a tsunami of hope. And if you think about almost all of the social issues of our time, were addressed by grassroots activism. Think about civil rights. Think about, there's just so many issues that have really begun with grassroots activism. And right now what we're seeing is lots and lots of different groups coming together and bringing people together and holding rallies and joining different groups together to bring our people to these rallies and to these marches. And getting the numbers of people are so important. What happens with advocacy and why we need to have our voices and why we need a seat at the table. So I sat at a table doing a talking to Congress at congressional briefings and things, where sitting next to me is a paid lobbyist. And those Washington lobbyists, they make six figures. They are paid to sell something, whatever it is. And in my case, they were paid to talk about how damaging it would be for insurance companies, how much it would cost if they opened it up and paid for people's treatment for mental health issues, which never made sense, still doesn't make sense. And I was at a hearing, and I was sitting, it was Rosalind Carter and me and two suits from the insurance companies. And I realized there that, if Rosalind Carter and I weren't sitting at that table, they're not going to hear from us. They're not going to hear from the people that are affected by this. They're hearing from somebody that's paid to get their attention. They're powerful. Lobbyists are really powerful. They got a lot of money behind them. We have numbers, and we need to keep those numbers moving up. It really encourages people to tell their stories. We're going to talk a lot more about that as we go forward, because it's really important to be able to tell your story effectively to keep and get someone's attention. But it's so empowering. And one of the things that I hear every time I do an advocacy day is in the feedback is that I felt empowered. Somebody was listening to me, somebody cared, somebody that has the potential to make change happen actually wanted to hear my story. It's an incredible, empowering exercise. And again, I don't have to talk about this more. There's powers in numbers, and we just keep amplifying each other. And the other thing it does is that as we're talking about democracy, and we're talking about voter rights, and we're talking about incarceration without due process, and we're talking about all the other issues that we're going to be talking about in the next few months, we're raising awareness. We're talking to other people. Sometimes the media grabs onto this stuff and focuses on that, and that just gets more, and then we bring more people in under our tent, and that's really important. And the last thing I have here is we're the experts. So whatever our particular issue is, in my case, then it was eating disorders. I know a lot about that, and I need to share my knowledge, because policymakers don't necessarily have all that information, and they simply can't have all that information because, next slide, please. Policymakers and advocates are two different, we're in two different camps. So think about it. A policymaker has thousands of issues that people want them to listen to and want their attention and want them to do something about. And they are, they can't know about the ins and outs of thousands of issues. It's impossible. And their staff can't. Advocates typically have one issue. And now with Unite and Rise and Women Defending Democracy, we'll have several issues, but it's all, the central issue is defending democracy, right? So that's our issue. Policymakers, again, have limited understanding. They can't know everything about everything. We know a lot about our issue, and that's a real big difference as well. Policymakers are spread really thin. They're so busy. Their staff is so busy. You go out to Washington, you go to the State House in Minnesota, there's people sitting in their waiting rooms. There's hundreds of people that want their attention and want them to act on whatever it is they're bringing to them. And we advocates, we're dedicated to our cause. And so we're not as distracted. Policymakers typically negotiate. Now, this has changed a lot. So I almost didn't put this in, because today, what we are seeing is there's not a lot of reaching across the aisle. There's not a lot of negotiation or compromise, because the way things are happening in Washington now, it's so partisan that, they're voting almost 100%, not quite, along party lines. And so we're not seeing a lot of negotiation or compromise. I'm hoping we'll get back to that someday. And with advocates, we typically have our issue, and we don't really want to compromise. but we have to learn how to do that as well. My story about that is working on the second mental health parity bill. The first one in '96 was a sunset bill, and that Paul Wellstone and Pete Domenici were working on, and they passed it. And it was not a very good bill. It was very limiting. It didn't open up mental health treatment to very many people. It was restricted to just a few diagnoses, but it was a starting point. And that's oftentimes what happens. You get something passed and then you build on it. We were working really hard on that bill after Paul Wellstone died in the plane crash. I partnered with his son, David Wellstone, and he and I spent months and hundreds of meetings on the Hill talking to senators and members of the House and trying to get a better mental health parity bill passed. And it passed in the House. It was real comprehensive. It had everything we all wanted. It was basically the bill said that mental health parity would apply to all the diagnoses in the DSM, which is sort of the Bible for mental health. We were at a meeting with Ted Kennedy, and he basically said, that's a non-starter in the Senate. We have to compromise. We have to take some things out. And Kitty, you're not going to like what we have to take out. Can you live with that? And that was a seminal moment for me. I was really taken aback. And I wanted to say, no, I don't want you to take it out. And then Jim Ramstad was in the room because he was championing it in the House. And he said, Kitty, this is our chance to pass parity. It is not going to be a priority in the next administration. If we don't pass this now, it was at the end of the session, it won't happen because they were focusing on the Affordable Care Act and other issues. And so I had to compromise, and because it was the right thing to do, and I wanted to live to fight another day. And you have to be able to do that. Policymakers are driven by re-election. They want their jobs. And that's why they listen to constituents and pay attention. And we advocates, we're driven by passion. We're driven by something we believe in and that we want to see change happen around. Next slide, please. So this is a really important point as well. When you are writing a letter or writing an email message, I'll talk a little bit about not writing letters because they just get stuck in the mailroom and never get to anybody. Emails get through easily. Postcards can get through pretty easily. Text messages can get through. And in-person meetings are amazing. But one thing that needs to happen is there needs to be a unified message. What can happen if it dilutes it if everybody is saying something different? So that's why when you get action alerts from our organization or any other organization you might be involved with, they usually have a script and they really want you to stick to that script. Now, we want people to add their own personal story to the script, but whatever we're talking about, in this case, the SAVE Act, we want everybody, the thousands, hopefully millions of people that are making phone calls, communicating in whatever way they're communicating, to basically say the same thing. And there's real power in that. If people vary from that, it can get real muddled and it can cause confusion and it can ruin relationships. And I had an experience. I was leading a team from New York at one of our advocacy days, and we were meeting with Kristen Gillibrand, and we were talking about the Anna Westin Act. No, we were talking, maybe it was mental health parity. I don't remember the year we did that, but anyway, a member of our team, and what we did when we bring people to Washington, we did basic training and message training, and we had people write their stories, and we had a real system when we went into meetings. There's always a team lead, and the members, the people that are on our team you know, the watch their team leader and take cues from them. And so everybody had their role to play. And we were talking about our issue, and it was a person's turn to talk, and she was from New York, and she just went off on Kristen Gillibrand, like screaming at her and swearing at her. I was taken aback, and she was really mad because Kristen Gillibrand had encouraged Al Franken to resign. And she was just pissed off about that. And, you know, it was justified in her mind and justified, but it was so bad. And we lost a really important relationship. And it set us back a great deal because we had to really work hard to regain her trust and her support. And that, I can't tell you how damaging it was and how disconcerting. I had to physically get up and remove this person from the room and apologize repeatedly. So, you know, that was a real extreme example, but it is so important, you know, to stay on message. And, you know, when we talk about the ask, it's really important to everybody knows what the ask is. And so right now, the ask around the SAVE Act is for senators to vote no. And we'll get into all the, you know, the reasons for that, but you kind of always have to know what you're going to ask and have to have everybody asking the same thing. So we don't want somebody going in saying, you know, well, we're here, we said we were coming in to talk about the SAVE Act, but I want to talk about climate change. No, that is never okay. It's not that that's not important. And so, again, with the SAVE Act and any of the initiatives that the Minneapolis League or the Minnesota or the US League does, you know, there's toolkits and there's action sheets, and those are all the things that you as advocates can use during these campaigns to stay on message, to know what the ask is, and to be much more effective in your advocacy. The other thing I wanted to say about this is that when we are talking, you know, if you're doing in-person meetings or Zoom meetings, which I've had a lot of those as well, it's really important to understand that if you are talking to, if you've asked for a meeting, it is pretty unlikely that you get meeting with the member themselves. They're really, really busy. So you'll meet with staff, and we're really good at pushing and trying to get meetings with senior staff. Leah knows all about this, and setting up those meetings. And that's almost more important than meeting with a member. And the reason I say that is that, again, going back to the slide that talked about how many thousands of issues members are, you know, expected to deal with, if you can get a staff person to get behind your issue, they can keep it in the forefront. They can run it up the flagpole. They can make sure their boss is addressing that issue. So one of the ways that we were successful in passing the Anna Westin Act is my daughter Mary, her college roommate went into politics and went to work for Amy Klobuchar. And she went in as a low-level employee, but she knew me and she knew our story, and I talked to her a lot. And every time I'd go out to Washington, I'd go talk to her, and I'd ask her if, you know, to help us keep this in front of Amy Klobuchar. She ended up being Amy's chief of staff. And so we had this, you know, really direct line to Amy Klobuchar, who has been the champion for not only the Anna Westin Act and did heroics to keep that, you know, from being killed and getting it onto President Obama's desk. She has helped us pass other legislation around eating disorders. The Anna Westin Act was the first piece of legislation to directly address eating disorder issues. And so, again, it's those relationships and building those relationships that are so very important. Next slide, please. So I put this slide in because when I talked about being informed and getting your facts right, when you're writing an email or going into a meeting, you really want to do some research ahead of time. You want to know what the facts are. And the reason is that the people that are reading your email or meeting with you care about that. They want to know where those facts came from. How do you know that? How do you know that's truth? You need to be able to cite that and tell them. And so as far as the SAVE Act is that what we can honestly say and the facts back us up is that voter fraud is extremely rare. It's a handful of people in each election that perpetrate voter fraud. Other people that are maybe caught out for accidentally registering twice are usually mistakes. And so the voter fraud that's prosecuted, that people really are guilty, the SAVE Act is trying to fix a problem that's not a problem. And so we need to be able to say that and get those facts correct. When we're talking about budget issues, they want to know the CBO score. It's our job to figure that out. Now you don't have to figure it out. We do. The leaders have to figure that out and give you that information. So next slide, please. So now, your role as an advocate is basically to tell your story. And when you tell your story, you want to be authentic. It needs to be your story. It needs to be real. It needs to it needs to have your emotion in it, but not being overly emotional or overly angry, or it needs to be pretty nuanced. Being concise. We tell our advocates that you basically have 3 minutes, 3 to 5 minutes. 5 minutes would be a really long time with a member of Congress. And so you need to be able to tell your story really powerfully in a short period of time. Next slide, please. So I was doing an advocacy day, and I was leading a team from Minnesota and Wisconsin. And a young man was on my team, and he showed up. And I'd never met him before. He hadn't been to one of our advocacy days. And so I asked him to introduce himself and tell me why he was there. So he said his name is Nathan, and he's from Wisconsin. And he pulled up his iPad with this picture, and he showed it to our group. And he said, "This is my children on my wife's grave. She died 6 weeks ago." It literally took all the air out of the room. He didn't have to say anything else. We had a meeting with then Speaker Paul Ryan later that day. And so I told Nathan, that was perfect. That's more powerful than any words. Do exactly that. So we had our meeting. Nathan showed this photo. Paul Ryan teared up. You can't help it. And we wrapped, we gave him all the facts. We wrapped up the meeting. And as I was walking out the door, Speaker Ryan said, "Kitty, I have one last question." "Oh, okay, fine." And he looked at me and he said, "How could somebody not support this?" And I know it was Nathan's story and seeing these babies that lost their mother because insurance company wouldn't pay for mom's treatment. And so they're powerful, and you all have powerful stories. I don't want anybody to have this kind of a story or my story, but your stories of registering voters and having to say no to somebody, or they're just powerful, and they'll listen. And so the other piece, though, is then we have to tie your personal story to the message. So we have the message, the SAVE Act. How has it affected you? And then you take your cues from your leader or your organization. So the next slide, please. is basically how to tell your story. And this is the slide that I have a worksheet. If anybody wants it, I'm happy to email it to you. You know, the components that the EDC has come up with are, start with with your end goal in mind. What do you want? That's really important to know that, because then you build to that. You have to have an opening. You set the stage. So my, opening would be, I'm Kitty Westin from Minnesota. I've been part of the League of Women Voters. For the last 10 years, I've been registering voters in Minnesota, and paint the picture. It's such an amazing process. It's organized, it is secure, seeing people's faces when they're able to register to vote, talking to them about how to vote, where to vote. It's an incredible, empowering experience. I love to do it. The struggle, if the SAVE Act passes, it's going to make it almost impossible for the League of Women Voters. One of our superpowers is being nonpartisan and registering people to vote. Not ever talking about candidates, not ever telling people who to vote for, teaching them how to vote. I am petrified that we are going to be unable to do that. And it is people's right and responsibility to vote, and taking that away from people just doesn't make sense to me. The discovery, it's always important to, talk about, and when we, I go into high schools, and these kids are excited. They want to register to vote. They want to hear about it. They want our stickers and the little, things we give to them. And it feels like we're doing something so important. The outcome, what's your experience when something goes right or something goes wrong? As far as the SAVE Act, if in fact it passes, it's going to be very difficult for us to partner with all the organizations that we partner with to be in their community events, to register people to vote. People are going to show up. They're not going to have their passport or their birth certificate, or their birth certificate isn't going to match their driver's license because it's somebody that changed their name or got married. It's going to make the job so much harder, and it's not necessary. And then the button is, finish with the hook. And that's basically saying, okay, we always ask, do you have any questions? How can we help you? And can I count on you to, in this case, vote no on the SAVE Act? That puts them a little bit on the spot, which is okay, because we want that. We want them to think about it. We want them, if it's a staff person, we want them to take it to their boss and talk about, we had this meeting and we heard from these people, and this is something that's really important. I'm looking at my time here. Oh my gosh. How does this happen? It goes so fast. And so I think when we're talking about working with our local league or your local league, wherever you're from or in the community, is there's a few nuances about how to be effective, and we've talked about some of them. But again, if you're in person, sometimes we have meetings out in the hallway. We always tell people to have an elevator speech ready, because if you're at the State House in Minnesota or if you're at the Capitol in Washington, you oftentimes run into members in the hall. And it's okay to stop and introduce yourself and tell them who you are, and tell them why you're there. And that's where, you have 30, 40 seconds. And so something really concise. If you make a phone call, and that's a really important way to be an advocate, to answer a action alert, call your representatives. What we do there is, I suggest there that you pretty much follow the script, because what happens there's somebody at the front desk. They check you in if you're there in person, they answer the phone, and they're basically somebody that is there to, just kind of tick boxes. So when you call and say, I'm Kitty Westin from Minnesota. I live on Drew Avenue South in Minneapolis, and I'm calling because I want Senator Smith to vote no on the SAVE Act. And follow the script, because they're not going to take down any details. It's not the venue for that. This is true. I have done this so many times, and I've had so many staff people say that it takes 24 phone calls in support or opposition to any particular issue for that staff person that ticked off those boxes. There's 24 people that said no to this, to take it to the next level. And so it would take it to the legislative director or somebody else. That person's going to take a look at that and see, okay, there's constituents that care about this, and they'll run it up the flagpole and get it to the member. And so basically the ask is the most important there. If you're doing an email, keep it short. Don't write a 5-page email, a 3-page email. They won't read it. They don't have time. They want facts. They want it down and dirty. They want it short. They want to be able to read it very quickly. They want something that'll grab them. So that's where, a little bit of your story, something that's going to grab their attention, and then send it off. I am not the right person to talk about the social media, because I don't do social media. But I've heard from some people that responding to members' social media accounts, if they send out something, to thank them if they've done something you appreciate, to say, and if you don't want, I would really encourage you to vote no on this because of this. That's can be really powerful as well. So I'm going to try to wrap it up here in just the next couple minutes so we can answer some of your questions. So next slide, please. One of the things that is so important to remember is that this is a process and it takes time. And, we just celebrated John Lewis, and this is one of my favorite quotes. Do not get lost in a sea of despair. Do not become bitter or hostile. Be hopeful. Be optimistic. Never, ever be afraid to make some noise and get in good trouble, necessary trouble. We will find a way to make a way out of no way. And I just think that's such a powerful statement on what we're facing right now, and making good trouble, and standing up and making good trouble some more. I mean, John Lewis almost lost his life more than once by making good trouble. I don't encourage that. But it is important to have courage and to keep speaking out and keep standing up and never being afraid, never backing down, and trusting that, everything it changes, and there's going to be new administration and new leaders. And it's our job to, keep getting up and doing the right thing, and then getting up and doing it again. Right now, it's easy to feel despair. I have days that I just I can't do this. One of the things I do to protect myself, I really limit news consumption. It's not healthy for me. I can't do it. And I have days that I just turn off everything because it's like, I can't do it. So take good care of yourselves, but keep standing up and keep showing up, and turn to our league, your leagues, and together we're going to make good trouble, right? Last slide. So one of the things that I have done hundreds of talks around the world, and I always end with this slide, and I end it because Anna kept journals. And when I read her last journal and her last entry, days before she died, this is what I found. May all your love, joy, and pain, all your fears and desires lead you to your own promises. May your dreaming never end and your voice never die. I think that was Anna's marching orders to me. I think that was Anna's marching orders to you. We need to be the voices. We need to stand up. We need to not let fear and despair shut us down. We need to not let our voices die. And together we can do this.
Thank you,
So,
Kitty.
you're welcome.
Yes. Thank you, Kitty. It's hard not to be teary-eyed from the beginning and from the end of your presentation. This was really powerful. And I think very helpful to all of us to hear your own personal story and all of your advice about what we can do. We have a little bit of time here, just short of 10 minutes for questions. I see Ann Erickson. Hang on here, I'm going to change my view, but and maybe Meg can help. I don't see any in the chat right now, but Ann,
actually, oh, sorry. There's a statement, and I actually put a question in the chat.
Okay, do you want to start?
Go ahead, Meg.
Yeah. So the statement first is from Gay Trashel. Sorry, Gay, for not saying that correctly. I think it's also important, she says, to make contact with the person taking the call. Ask their name and a personal question, especially if calling every day. So that was her piece of advice. So that's
great. Thank you, Gay. I agree.
And then my question, Kitty, was, so when you talk about reaching out to representatives and senators, you know, we talk a lot about this in our action plans. Do we only reach out to the senators and representatives that we're constituents of, or can we reach out to any of them and all of them?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Meg. Certainly, if you're a constituent, they will pay much more attention. Oftentimes, if you try to reach out to, excuse me, an office, when you're not a constituent, if you go to their websites and do the contact me, you get a firewall. They won't even let you leave a comment. So it's certainly more powerful to be a constituent, and they pay more attention to that. You know, I have friends that reach out to people across the country, and I don't know if that's very effective. I'm doubting that if you called and the person that's ticking the box, if you're not from Minnesota, they'll probably listen and be respectful, but they're probably not going to add it to their list of constituent concerns.
Okay, so when we initiate our actions, we really need to focus on for whatever district people are in, their representative, and for our 2 state representatives.
Right.
State senators, yeah.
State senator, right. So anybody in Minnesota can reach out to Amy and Tina,
Right.
and then as the House of Representatives, it's much more powerful if you are reaching out to, Ilian is mine. So if I'm reaching out to her, and
Okay,
again,
super.
you reach out several times and they get to know you, and I think Gay's advice was really good. That whoever's answering the phone, sometimes they get to know you and they will talk to you. And
You, Colleen.
That's great.
So another
Okay,
question.
thanks, Meg. I'm just going to move to the next question. Jane Hovland, you said you had a question here in the chat. Would you ask the question yourself?
Sure.
Hi.
I appreciate what you said. It was great, but I beyond the woman who was terrible to Senator Gillibrand, what other errors have you made in pursuing, especially Anna's Act? You know, what are some things that you could reflect on that would help us kind of avoid a pitfall?
That's another really great question. Okay, so when we first developed the Anna Westin Act, it had several components to it, and it actually was called, it had some long, ridiculous name, and it had like 5 or 6 asks, and it was just plain too big. And that was a mistake. We couldn't get people to sign on because there was just too many components, and people didn't like this part of it, but didn't like that part. So we ended up scaling it back. We ended up changing the name. So it was the FREED Act, Federal Response to Eating Disorders, or something like that. And we had our policy director say, you know, we really need to name it something that they're gonna remember. Can we use Anna's name? That was a really hard thing for our family, because basically her name is now branded, and we had to give permission for other people to talk about Anna and talk about, use her name on the floor of the House and the Senate. But the mistake was not using it, and we corrected that by us saying, yes, you can use her name if that's going to get this done. We had to listen to the policymakers when they said, this is too much. We need to hone this down. The Anna Westin Act that passed really only had two parts. One was opening up residential higher levels of care to people with eating disorders that insurance would pay for. And the other was developing a center for excellence for educating physicians and other people around eating disorders. They were both huge, and they both have been really, really impactful, but we had to leave out a lot of things that, of course we wanted in there. So.
Great, thank you. Let's see who else. Gay, would you like to speak up and ask your question? You had a comment, and where are you? I don't see Gay. Does anyone? I wonder if they are no longer on the call. Okay, are there any other questions?
I'm here.
There you are. Hello.
Hi. You said that you had to compromise, and because you knew that that was the only way you were going to get the bill through. Have you gone back, or are you going to, in the future, going to revisit the parts that you wanted to include that you couldn't?
Yes, thank you. We have, and we've actually passed a couple more bills since the Anna Westin passed in 2015. And we're working on like Kids Online Safety Act to limit algorithms. So we have lots of other things we are working on. So yes, so you pass what you can, and then you build on it, or you create new bills. One of the things that is really important to, I guess, understand is that it's very few bills that people introduce ever even get to committee hearings, much less get passed. And so working with really experienced people like Amy Klobuchar is just so important, because they're the ones that really can tell you. And it was when Ted Kennedy said, we can't pass this with this language in it. And the caveat is, right, Gay, that we can come back and we'll fix it. It's like that first parity law that wasn't really very good, but let's pass it. We'll make it a sunset bill so we can work on it. Does that answer your question?
Kitty, I think there's a couple of other
Yes.
questions in the chat. Sarah, there's a couple of other questions.
Sure.
Monica and Becky both have a question. Monica, you want to go?
Sure. Kitty, that was excellent. Thanks so much for telling us your story, and also giving us quite the, the brief on what advocacy is and what it means to you and how we move forward. But I was wondering how in the world you kept the momentum for 15 years to pass a bill. How does that work? Is it like you go really strong and then it waits and you go, I was just wondering how you keep the energy in the people, and then when there's a time where you're not high moving and it's low, can you just tell us a little bit more about that process?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's hard. It's exhausting. And one of the things that helps, though, is that people give me credit for the Anna Westin Act, and I'm just a cog in the wheel. I did not do that. I had these, hundreds of people from around the country. We had people from every state, and they're all working with their members. And so it's really important to have other support. I don't think I could have ever done it on my own, Monica. I could never have sustained it.
Sure.
Because it's just too exhausting, and I don't have the expertise. So it's getting momentum. It's bringing new people along. Our advocacy days, we would invite people and bring new people in all the time. So there was always some seasoned advocates, and then there was some new people that brought in their own interest and their own passion. And again, Monica, if you look back and think back about what I was saying is we have a passion, and I had lost the most important thing, and I had a passion to do something about it. And I wasn't going to give up. I've been called a pit bull because once I latch onto something, I don't let go. And I was, I was told one time that just give her what she wants because she's going to keep coming back. And I've had staffers say, "Do you live out here? I had somebody ask me, do you work out here? Are you on Amy's staff?" And it's like, no, I care about this. So I guess that's how you do it. You can't do it alone. Nobody in this group can do it alone. And that's why I love this initiative. I don't know how many people went to the Good Trouble marches, or went to the Hands Off marches, or went to the, what was the other one? What was the big one? Not that when
Okay.
Melissa Hartman was killed.
No kings, hands off.
Yeah, no kings. Surrounding yourself with other activists, bringing other groups in. We had Mental Health America, we had dietitians, we had social workers, we had universities. You bring other people under your tent, and that's how you get it done. It's a real group effort, and I don't think anybody can do it on their own. I really don't. And we don't have
No,
to do this. We got, 38
Nor would
people
you
here.
want to, right? I
No.
Right.
can't imagine. Yeah.
All right.
No.
Thank you for that, Kitty, because I think we all need encouragement at this point, because I think we're all realizing now we're in this for the long haul.
Yes.
This is going to be, determine what's happening in our country right now around is first of all, we're being stonewalled, but time and time again, but what we're trying to do is exactly what you're describing. And thank you for saying that, is a collective grassroots effort that will pull us all together with our common cause and with our passion for defending our democracy. Right. So that's really why we're here, and we appreciate all of your comments to encourage us. Are there other, Meg, other questions
one more
in the
question.
chat?
And Becky Panch, sorry, Becky.
Yep, Panch. Good try though.
Thanks.
And maybe you already answered this with the pit bull analogy, but when we're calling in support of or against a bill that's up in Congress, does it make sense to call every day as an individual? Should I call once? And
no, call multiple times.
Do they keep track of who's calling, or do they just keep track of the number of calls?
Well, they'll take your name. They want to, you're from Minnesota, so they keep track of that. But you can call every day, and every day they're going to tick off. You're going to be one of the numbers of people that called in support of this. We've had efforts in DC where we have basically shut their phone system down because we've had so many people calling. And that's a really powerful message. It's like we were talking before everybody got on about, how France, they strike. They get attention because they shut everything down. And if you don't listen to us, we're going to keep shutting you down. We're going to inundate you with these phone calls until something happens. And so it's like what I was saying is that you get knocked down and you stand up and you just keep doing the next right thing. I guess that's sums up what I've done for these many years.
Yeah.
And just
I think those are the best words.
Quickly, sorry, Kitty, in terms of for us, especially in Minneapolis, I mean, Amy and Tina and Ilhan are probably similar in terms of their thinking. So as constituents, calling the same person all the time. But I guess one of the things we could think about as an action item is, did you ever reach across state lines and say, hey, people in Wisconsin or wherever, make sure you're calling your representative and your senator to make sure to say no to the SAVE Act, and here's some information about why. I mean, we could do stuff like that, I guess, couldn't we?
Right, right. Yeah, yeah. We, that's what we do when we do our advocacy days. We bring people from across the country and we put people in teams. So these are the Wisconsin people. I've led teams from New York, Tennessee, Wisconsin, probably every state. And so, yeah, I mean, we need to encourage. And because this is also a US initiative, there's leagues across the nation that are having these meetings, I hope, and encouraging their members to be activists. And if somebody reaches out, or if any of you have people, if Gay from Duluth, if you want me to come and speak to your people, do the same thing, I would be happy to do that. That's how we're
Great.
going to get this done.
Right, right. Okay, I think we're going to wrap this up. We're a little bit over, but it was worth every minute of it. So I thank you all for coming to hear this, and let's give Kitty a huge hand. This was just incredible. I think we all learned a lot, and you, I think you are, you're empowering us, Kitty, and that's, just what we're going to be needing going forward. So really appreciate this. This is an excellent presentation. I think many people are saying that in the chat, and I just want to remind you, for those who are putting your names in the chat, please include your emails, because if we don't have you on our list, we need to put you on our list, and the only way we can reach you is through our emails. So you might be hearing about us from other sources, but we do want to have your email so we can get you on our own list.
Would it make sense, Sarah, for me to put together, like a handout of this, and we can send it to everybody that's on this call?
Sure, absolutely. That would be great.
You don't have to open it, but it's then you'll have the information that I shared, and
that would be fabulous, Kitty.
And
that would be really wonderful. So I see people are putting their emails in. So yes, put your emails in, and we will send. And Kitty, you can send that to me, and then I will forward it to whoever is. Yeah,
and I'm happy to have you reach out to me personally and say, okay, this is something I would like to do, or I'm confused, or I'm frustrated, and I'm happy to talk you through this.
Kitty, is it okay if I put your email in the in the chat? Okay, hang on just one second. I have to pull it up here. So, or maybe Anne or Leah could quickly do that. You can probably do it more quicker than I can. All right, everyone. Thank you for coming. And Kitty, this was really wonderful. We really appreciate your pushing us on, encouraging us to hang in there for the long haul. 15 years, it was really impressive. It's really impressive what you've done. Okay, everyone. Thank you.
Everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.